Hey everyone, I'm very excited about today's episode where I'm going to learn and share more about what's all about, what it takes to make a race bib. And I'm fortunate to have here Tyler McGraw, the founder of RunVirt, based in the bib town of America, Anderson, South Carolina.
This is a great day for Anderson County. What we're so excited about is because of our business incubator, we helped these people move into their own facility. And that is what County Council designed it to do, to grow our own and take care of our own in Anderson County. We didn't start this business. We don't run this business. We didn't take the risk necessary to do this business, but we were able to assist to a small degree. And that means the world to us. So this is like us giving birth to our first baby.
I'd like to thank Mr. McGraw and his team at RunVirt for locating in District 2 as we continue to build relationships. Businesses continue to come to the area. Congratulations on your startup. Congratulations on moving forward. And hey, let's do business.
Your innovation, dedication, and hard work have made this achievement possible. Your journey from vision to reality exemplifies innovation, resilience, and excellence. Best wishes for continued growth and success in your new location. And of course, it's dated Friday, June 28, 2024. And that's from County Council.
Right. Taylor, glad to have you on the pod.
Hey man, I appreciate it, and thanks for the intro, and thanks for the shout out of Bibtown, USA, Anderson, South Carolina, man.
Great, and to learn a little bit more why it got the name of Bibtown of America, but I know we're going to deep dive a little bit on that. But let's start with a little background of you. You have a fascinating background, how you actually got into the racing industry, plus you founded RunVert. If you can take us back and journey a little bit more about your personal story.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people that I've met so far in like the running industry, they've all kind of got their start because of running. And for me, that wasn't the case. I wasn't a runner. I got my start in the running industry because I wanted to get into something related to manufacturing, and find something that, like a product that I could really sink my teeth into and really understand the manufacturing process. And so, for me, that was it. I was so far from a runner. I smoked cigarettes. I was like the most unhealthiest person when I got like my start in the running industry. And, and it's come full circle. Now it's been 13 years. And so it's really changed my life. But, going back to those early days, there was a leadership development program at a company in Anderson, South Carolina. I was just graduating college. And at the time, all I knew coming out of college was how to wait tables and how to drink beer. I really needed to, I wanted to start a professional career. So what I really liked about the leadership development program at that time was, I spent time and really everything that really went into running a printing shop. So I got into, how to do the estimating, how to do the customer service, the front office work, then we actually got into how to run the equipment, how to run the finishing equipment, and really got into like the nuts and bolts of what makes, a printing company go. And I kind of caught the bug, and the one neat thing was it wasn't just any printing company. It was a company that had a very unique niche in bib production and had been doing race bibs since like the mid 70s. And so it was such a really cool time. At the time we were doing, I would think probably the most bibs. I think we're probably the leader in market share at the time. So we were doing pretty much all the majors here in the U.S. And it was a very hectic time, but it was a fun time to kind of understand everything that goes into the art of making race bibs. And so that's how I got my start. It's how I kind of cut my teeth. I spent close to a decade there working my way through mostly the production side. I got to spend a little bit of time. At one point, a couple of things happened, where, people leave the organization. It kind of created an opportunity to move into the sales side, which at the time I never really considered myself a salesperson. I was more of an ops guy. I really, it was all about, solutions and, trying to, improve our processes. And that to me is what really got me going. I never really thought of me as like a salesperson until not prepared for it.
Yeah.
But prepared me for the process I'm in now, now running my own business. I had about half a year of managing a P&L, managing all the things that go with, running a company. And so that was a kind of a unique period of time. And honestly, it changed a ton. What changed a lot, obviously, was COVID, for
Mm,
for everybody. So
right.
at the time, I was running the competition media side of our business. Things were going great. We had just coming off a record year for us on the running side of the business. We had just merged with another facility under the R&W umbrella, which
Mhm.
kind of had complicated some things, but things were kind of settling in. And then COVID hit. And honestly, I remember COVID being, when it first came on, we were in Las Vegas at Running USA. And I remember like traveling and, seeing people, kind of wearing masks, and honestly, at that time, I didn't really take it that seriously, what impact it might have, because, you know, how many of these things have we seen, throughout our time, that it's
Right.
never going to turn into the dumpster fire it eventually turned into. It, completely, I think, shook our world. In our world, I mean, the running world completely upside down.
Right. Right.
And at the time, it felt like the world was just flipped upside down. And, what are we going to do? As just as like a family at that time, we had he was 9 months old. So my oldest son was 9 months old. And, personally, you're thinking, how are we going to move forward? Half my income is shut down because we're no longer doing, running events. How am I going to put food on the table? And then we got hit with the fact that we found out that she was pregnant with triplets, which completely,
I see.
that immediately changed the game
Yeah.
for me
Yeah.
personally. Um, yeah, I mean, so at that point, I actually took a little bit of a break from the running industry for about a year. And I'm going to tell you, that was the longest year of my life, in terms of, well, we had COVID, and at the same time, we had triplets, and, and was able to work from home. And, you're talking, I mean, so many diaper changes, like an unbelievable amount of diaper changes. Being away from an industry that, I'd grown to love, coming, like I said, going back from when I first came into it, being probably one of the most unhealthiest, 23-year-old males ever, right? I, smoked about a pack of cigarettes a day, and loved to drink cold beers. But at the time, when COVID hit, I had started to kind of caught the bug of running. I was, had a weekly running routine, and really started to kind of miss my friends in the running industry. And so, you don't realize the thing is your thing. I didn't realize that I had, caught
Yeah.
the bug until I was away for a year. And then the next thing I know, I was trying to explain to my wife, hey, I know we have 4 kids. I know they're quite young. I know we're a single income household, but what if I decide to quit my job and go both feet into starting my own race bib company?
Mhm.
And here we are now, 3 years into RunVert.
All right. That's a fascinating story, and it took a leap of faith, and I'm very
Man.
glad that we are talking today, because you make sure it definitely made it work, and you want to grow going forward, I'm sure, and all the best for that. When you said you take a break for a year, so I know that was at that time you have to put food on the table, so you have to make sure. So you switched the industry and went in a different industry, right? That's what you meant.
Well, I stayed in printing, and this is
Okay.
where I
Okay.
started to learn the difference between, if I identified personally as a printer or as a bib guy.
Mm.
There's two different. I being away for that period of time allowed me to understand the difference, that I'm not necessarily a printer. That's not necessarily what I missed. It wasn't the printing aspect, 'cause I was still in printing, but it was a different type of printing. We were
I
doing
see.
direct mail
Okay.
for banks at that time. It was during COVID. Everybody was refinancing. But, I go ahead and apologize in advance for anybody that got all that, that spam mail in their mailbox for refinancing their house. That was mostly coming from our company that I was with at that time. And But, so I definitely at that point, that really helped me, again, understand the difference between being a printer, just trying to put ink on stuff, and really what I truly missed was the product side, the bib side. And now what it's for us, what we consider to be an expanded idea of what a bib is really more of participant identification. And so that kind of helped set the, obviously the foundation for where we are at RunVirt today and kind of the future and where we're headed.
Great, great. So let's start with what is your vision with RunVirt and why did you found? Because I think you call yourself as the weird bib guy. And I'm sure, I think you painted the picture why you are calling it because you found that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
how is RunVirt different than maybe the traditional bib printing kind of side of business?
Yeah. And I would say the answer to that is we are solely focused on this. And it's not that, people that are, other people in the space, there's a ton of really, and they're all great. And I'm not going to sit here and talk about any of them because I've know all of them personally, and they all do a really good job. What my vision and why I thought RunVert was needed is because I think that there needed to be a sole focus on the product and not doing other things, not doing, business cards, car apps. We're not just trying to put ink on anything. Right? I'm not trying to do any of those other things. I want to be solely focused on this thing, how to improve it, how to improve all facets of it. And I think by doing that, that's what's kind of lacked. That's why, in my opinion, and this is somebody who's worked before this in a previous life, was working at a large company that did bibs, but mostly did a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
They're not going to try and they're not going to try and fix something that's not broke. And so that's why you haven't seen any innovation on the bib front since the invention of digital printing in like the late 90s, because, it's been on the same material, pretty much looks the same. It functions the same way, you had a guest on previously that was talking about like, why are we still using safety pins? I mean, and it's the truth. Why are we still using safety pins? And it's because, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So nobody's trying to improve the materials involved. Nobody's really trying to kind of take the product and look at it from a product itself.
Yeah.
Instead, they're looking at it from, well, we have equipment that can run this and also, 4 other different, revenue streams. And they're focused, that's where they're buying the equipment. That's where they're focusing some of these other things, as opposed to being focused on the product. And then you can, inform your other business decisions after the fact.
So this brings me to a point. I think you're referring to probably, I had a chat with Frankie of Miami Marathon.
Yes,
I think
Frankie,
he mentioned that,
absolutely.
like, come on, this is 2025, right? Why we still have to use safety pin to, put the bib on our t-shirt and all, which is definitely a great question. This brings me to a point, Tyler. I think it would be good if you can give a landscape of the bib industry, because I think you have been into the industry, a lot of big players, and you're from the bib town of America. If you want to paint a picture on that, what does the landscape looks like? And then we'll probably dig in a little bit more what you're doing differently, I think, at Raceburg.
Yeah, I would say, it goes back to, you touched on Bibtown, USA a little bit, so my history and my understanding, right, and not just mine, like there's when I first started working for that race bib company, was Electric City Printing, and they had started producing race bibs in 1975. Nobody has like the exact date as when the first race bib came off the press, in the middle of downtown Andersonville. But we just say like the mid 70s. But so it's kind of like an oral history of what the industry is, how it's kind of shifted. My understanding is, when it first started, there was race bibs well before that, but it wasn't anybody that specialized in the actual production of race bibs, right? It was just a few people that would do a couple number pieces of paper. But, Electric City is one of the first that actually had a focus on and a program around the production of race bibs, which is well before digital printing. And there was really 2 main players, and both no longer exist. So the other one was Rainbow Racing out on the West Coast, and they existed for a long, long time. And then you had Electric City here on the East Coast. What ended up happening, it's kind of as things evolved, is Electric City was acquired in big part due to the running business because they had a niche. The thing about printing is, the R.R. Donnellys of the world where I used to work, they got, they're known for being the phone book printers, right? That type of stuff is no longer needed. So if you don't have a niche in printing, like if you don't have a thing that has value, they're no longer buying, magazines. There's no such thing as like all these other big things that were tied into print for so long. So you got to have something that has an edge. And so that provided a ton of value, and that's why Electric City was acquired multiple times and ended up being acquired by the largest printing corporation in the world. So at the time, and this is, I would say, you almost have to separate it as pre-COVID and post-COVID. Pre-COVID, you had, I would say, really, two here in South Carolina, us and eMedia. We actually all, Electric City and eMedia are kind of related in a really strange way, where eMedia actually came out of Electric City as well. So they actually came out of Bibs Town as well. They moved up to Greenville. You have pre-COVID, you had Boulder Bibs out there in Colorado. Some really great folks. You have Marathon Printing in Oregon, and I'm not trying to intentionally miss Athlete Race Numbers in New Jersey pre-COVID. And then you still had Rainbow doing things. Once COVID hit, Electric City dropped out of the business. RD does what big corporations do, divested, pivoted. They're now owned by private equity and doing a bunch of other stuff now, but definitely not doing anything near race bibs. Rainbow Racing got out of the business. So you had two of the longest standing race bib companies completely out of the industry. And for our little community, to me, that was a sad thing, to see, close to 4 decades of a product. And you're talking the 1984 LA Olympics bibs were, printed in Anderson, South Carolina. The 1996 Atlanta Olympic bibs were printed in Anderson, South Carolina. Our little community takes pride in this. It's a very, very proud thing for us that, hey, we're a small town, but we play a very big role in, the biggest races in the world. And so, that was, so anyways, but getting back to like the bigger picture of where we are today, there's, I think now, so you had two major players come out, and there was no new blood coming back into it. It was still the same people. I think now you have, Race Result doing some really cool things out of Germany, where, they're able to kind of pair tieback in a period of time. And so that actually ended up, bringing some newer materials into the market for the first time. Like it was almost like no questions asked what material you were getting. It was always tieback from everybody. And that supply chain issue, which was really, I would almost even say it was a DuPont inflicted issue where, and they're saying it was like the government mandated that they had to require a certain amount of tieback for the healthcare industry, which I agree with, which I'm not just, kind of starting to further the conversation and something that we're definitely pushing further into ourselves.
Let's talk about, so I'm very curious about this tieback. Looks like most of the bibs today produced are using tieback materials, right? Is that correct?
Correct. Absolutely.
So if you want to walk through the process of making a bib. So in here I have, and I am to come to Runvert in a bit. So I have two bibs in my hand. One is the Berlin Marathon that I ran in 2023. And I can see the back doesn't have any timing chip. So it's just like a plain simple piece of paper, but has ton of information. I want to get a little bit your thoughts on how it does. And this one is my Chicago Marathon bib, which has the MyLabs timing chip at the back. Yeah. Again, both of them, you see that I have the still pins, they're still hanging. I still pin it up on my t-shirt. So if you can, Tyler,
and real quick about the safety bins, I do want to make sure I do a shout out for my guy, Brian Goodell. He has a really great product, and a lot of people have utilized the Bib Boards product. The fact that we haven't evolved the fact that we haven't evolved race bibs, he's done a really great job of it, being able to bring a new product to market to make the activity of putting your bib on your shirt a lot easier and brandable.
And it's fun too.
So he's done a great job. Yeah, absolutely. And he's done a great job with that. So sorry.
Cool.
But
No, that's good. That's good to point that. At least that some innovation
yeah.
is happening in that front. That's good
Yeah.
to know. So if you can walk through the process of, like you mentioned
Yeah.
about tieback, and then how we get to that, because it's not a simple process. I think it's very complex and a lot of inputs, and you have to work with multiple stakeholders to get the finished product out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so there is, that's, when you look at a race bib, it's more than just a stupid piece of paper that I like to say, right? There's a lot of things that a race bib is used for.
Yep.
So if you look at it across the board, so a race bib is used obviously as a vessel for housing the timing device. So it's a part of the timing solution. It's used, it incorporates a ton of the registration data. So it ties in directly to a lot of the registration platforms. It's a credential for race day. So how you can get in certain areas. There's a lot of races that, have VIP or member access or, preferred things, elite runners, things like that. Right. So there's a lot of, value there. If you look at even, the New York Marathon does a really complex bib where for them it is one of the most complex things about their bib is the pre-race logistics. You having to shut down a city like New York, but you still have to get, 60,000 people to the start line. And so getting all that pre-race logistics, so they're printing, well, you need to get on the Staten Island ferry. You need to take this location to here, and all that is printed on your race bib as well. So there's a lot of value that a race bib can provide, a lot of utility if used correctly. And so, but getting into how that's done, there's a lot of that. We do a lot of work with the timers. I would say a lot of my relationships are usually kind of going to be in the timing industry, and with those folks. But we also do a ton of work with the registration partners. Some of the best, right? You had Bob on with Run Sign Up, and they do a ton, right? They do a ton of races. And one of the things that they've done uniquely is really kind of push the dynamic bib assignment. It's really, I think, changed a lot of how efficient expos run. But there's even some of the
Mm-hmm.
people like Haku, Jackie and Jose in that group. They do a ton of the really, really big events like Chicago you just had. They work with New York, and they do a lot of the complex data. And so we work a lot with them and how that needs to work with the race bib. And so, a lot of that, it's complicated. You wouldn't think just by holding a simple two-sided, piece of paper that, how much complexity is involved, but there is, because each file is different, from each bib is different from the other. So you don't realize until you almost, if we were to run the linear foot of how many bibs have been ran on something like Chicago, that's a ton of linear feet, and each 8 inches is a different image from the next. So it's not like you're just duplicating the same image over and over again. You're incorporating QR codes. Some even incorporate variable imaging, which I think I would encourage more people to do, where you can come with a database, and you can even version logos to hit demographics, certain package your demographics by different folks, just like you do programming, old school TV programming.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of change who offer maybe better price sponsor packages based upon demos, and that could populate on a race bib. So there's a lot of things that could be done with better programming, but there's a lot of stuff that happens just before a race bib is even printed.
Yeah.
That's so much of the process is before the bib even actually gets printed. There's that, and then you have what happens after. There's a ton of work that happens after it too.
That's true, because I do the back checkup, and then if you have some post race party details, it also goes into the bib sometimes, right? The tags
Absolutely.
that you put it into. Now, thanks for setting up the context. Now, if you want to walk through kind of the supply chain and the manufacturing side of the things, what it goes, and I think where I think probably you are innovating, and I want to go different and to understand more on how Runvert is doing it. But if you want to say, before you started to say innovate in this space, what is the traditional supply chain and the manufacturing steps looks like?
Yeah. And so that's one of the things that I credit being able to spend 10 years in the background. It has really helped me say, okay, now if I had my own business, how would I do it? And the number one thing is I want to reduce the amount of steps. I want to reduce the amount of overhead, increase the amount of automation. And that was like number one thing. And so I've always kind of had in my head, we all do, right? How many jobs have you had? You'd be like, if I was the big boss, this is how I would do it. And so I've always had this kind of vision in my head of like, well, this is the holy grail of what a super efficient bid production line would look like.
Yeah.
And so, hey, fast forward to 2022, I got my own company, and we're stacking volume. So at the time, we didn't have any equipment. We were actually doing a lot of work with the people we compete against now. We were buying from, and then eventually we were able to get volume to the point where it was kind of a no-brainer. We have to get our own equipment. And I'm like, the only way that I'm going to do this the right way is I'm going to do it with this little thing I had in my head. And so we were able to like literally build a one-of-a-kind bid production line. First of its kind, does not exist anywhere else, in the world. And its sole focus is to print race bibs. This thing couldn't print business cards if it wanted to. I wouldn't even know how to. So, the unique thing that, so what we were going against is this. So when I was at, Electric City, we had 2 web presses that all they did was print. The sole focus of what they did was print. And so we just actually had a really great on-site visit with the Atlanta Track Club. We were celebrating the launch of the Peachtree Road Race, which, big shout out to that group. They're wonderful. And, they were able to come up to Runvert at HQ. We made our whole place look like Uncle Sam threw up, because they're a 4th of July race. So we just had we had a balloon arch. We had a blow up Uncle Sam. We had hot dogs. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to celebrate 4th of July the full way.
Yeah.
And so, but anyways, so we had them up there, and I was like walking them through the process. I was like, if for instance, when we would run Peachtree in those days, we would spend probably a day and a half. So we would load up a big roll of Tyvek and just print the backs, not actually doing anything but that. Then we would flip it over, and then we would print the fronts, only printing the front. So it would just go roll to roll. Then we would have to go to a separate step where the sheeting would happen. So we'd get it off a roll, and then you would get it into sheets, right? And then from there, so now you have one operator on press, you have an operator at the sheeter. You would then go to another step where the perfing would happen. So like the tear-offs would go through a step where the tear-offs would be done.
Yeah.
From there, so now that's a third operator. You would go to the guillotine cutter where it would get cut down in the final size. So at this point, you'd be 2 or 4 up on a sheet. You would then go to your guillotine cutter where it would get cut down the final size. So now you're at operator 4.
Yeah.
You would then go to the round corner with order like Peachtree, where they're going to, they're going to have 53,000 finishers this year. You're talking, it's the world's biggest 10K. They're going to have, you're talking 8-9 days before we ever even put a tag on. And so that's going to add even more time. You're talking at least probably 2 weeks for tag affixing. So just crazy. And so,
all these steps, Tyler, are all serial. They're like sequential. They're not like, it's not happening in parallel, right? Steps.
Nope, exactly. They have to, so the way we were doing it is, we had 2 web presses. So you would think, and we could print all day long. We could print. We would run 2-3 shifts even at one point and just printing all day long. It didn't matter because we only had one sheeter. Yeah. So you just have a humongous backlog. So when you really look at it like from a lean manufacturing standpoint, so they all had to happen, in step. So there's always something going. It wasn't like, there's always somebody at the sheeter, but they had to happen in those ways. Got it. So, so it was coming into it my own. I'm like, all right, and generally kind of being familiar enough with, who were like, or who's already in the place to kind of generally know what they have as well. It's like, I think an opportunity for us would just be, let's just do it more efficient than anybody. And it's 2 fronts. Like when I look at efficiency, and that's one of our 3 pillars I want to talk about is efficiency, sustainability, and creativity. When I look at efficiency, to me, it's beyond, just a cost efficiency, there's energy efficiency,
Yeah.
and these things all kind of tie into each other. And so, if I'm able to do this with one piece of equipment instead of 10, I'm saving money, I'm saving energy, we're doing all this other stuff in a way more efficient way. So, so that's what we did. We went and we had this thing in my head, got this, one of a kind, bib production line installed later than I was expecting. Again, these are things now I look back and kind of laugh, being a first-time business owner. It's like, probably should have planned that. Things always are going to be later than expected and cost more than expected, and that's definitely what happened. But, so we were a month behind in getting our production line installed. It took us a month to really kind of get it dialed in. And it honestly even took us a year to really get to the point where I have it where we are now. So like, now we can load up, raw material on one end, and out the other end comes a completely finished product with one operator. I don't need 10 steps. So when we were showing the folks from Peachtree, I'm like, we're able to tag right now. You were here to see the launch of that first bib came off. We're able to start tagging immediately instead of waiting those 10 days. And that's a reduction in speed to market. It's providing value all throughout our supply chain.
So that is the efficiency part that you mentioned, that the three pillars that in Runvert. So what is the efficiency gain from your understanding? Is looks like probably 7 steps to now it's like 1 step end to end.
One step, one operator. And like the thing for me is like, these are things that we could do from an engineer, like getting machines to do it the right way, getting a smarter machine, allowing people to do people things. That's what I like to tell people is like, I could put things and we have a leaner team, but we are able to do things much more efficiently. So I have people doing people things and the equipment doing the things that equipment should be doing.
No, that makes sense. But I was looking at more of if you want to percentage, like 60%, 70% efficiency gain from the traditional bib printing to the what you have at Runvert end to end in one step with one operator.
Well, not having like the empirical data to tell you exactly, I would say that our team, is we have 6 full-time employees and we're doing the same basically the same throughput that we were doing, back at Electric City with basically 3 times the footprint of employees and, overhead and all the other stuff, and we still have opportunities to add more. Like we still have capacity that we can add into. So
cool. So the best thing that I think you probably will bring it up is that you are thinking bib not as a outcome of a printing, right? So you have a printing press, your goal is to print paper and it doesn't matter what you put into the paper, right? That's what the traditional was. But you are thinking bib as a product and you're optimized the whole product life cycle, leveraging, obviously, I think you're talking about brain, but I think you're leveraging a lot of technologies to actually get there because you combined all the 7 steps in one operator too. And then part B is that you're also bringing in the sustainability as one of the core pillars, that how you're doing it as you're rethinking the product. If you want to highlight a little bit on what you are doing differently or how you're thinking sustainability as the forefront as one of the pillars.
Yeah, and it is, and it's one of those things. Another shout out is my chief bib guy, Jay Guidry. He's my sales guy. He's somebody that I have a long relationship. Like we were roommates in college. And he is, I would say, he's the lead hippie at Runvert. So he kind of brings that kind of that ethos into our culture. When we were at college together, like he's an environmental science major. So like he is his wife's she's a conservationist for Upstate Forever here in South Carolina, and so like he is very environmentally conscious. And so he has educated me and made me aware of a ton of different things. And it's kind of brought me to the light and say, okay, like we should take this seriously. And it's not like, I'm not sitting here saying that like Tyvek is the reason for global warming. It's not. And honestly, most runners keep their bibs. But what really started to kind of weigh on me is like when I see the amount of Tyvek that we personally throw away.
I see.
And know that Tyvek is not a recyclable material. Knit for house wrap, and so we got to work. We do a ton of work with Tina Muir and her team with Racing for Sustainability. I'm not sure if you've if you've ever heard of her or any of the great work that they're doing, she'd be honestly a great person to have.
She works with Running USA as well, I would guess, right?
She does.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
she does. I mean, she works with, I mean, everybody. I mean, and she does a ton of work, doing a lot of things. She does like a thing called plogging where, you know, they'll go and, before the course, like they'll have, like before the race, like they'll go and like run the course, but they're picking up the trash beforehand. And it's kind of like made it into like an activity. She has a really neat initiative that they were talking about with the folks from, what was it? Who is she at? Matt Helbig. She had Matt Helbig. Her and Matt Helbig were doing a program at Running USA talking about save a tree, plant a tree, which is a really neat thing that they're doing where people can bypass getting a T-shirt with their registration. Instead, it turns into you know, you can plant a tree. So it's a really neat program that they're doing, and it's benefiting all different, you know, I forget how many trees that they said that they were able to plant in and around St. Louis. But so anyway, it can do all the great things at Tyvek. Really, it makes it like I wouldn't say irresponsible to recycle. It's so hard to recycle because it's so lightweight. It's like trying to recycle a ton of feathers. Like the sheer amount of like square footage you would need is crazy. And so, you know, so they don't put any effort into another recycling facility. They're the same. So, but anyway, so we wanted to find something that can do all the great things that Tyvek does, and we've put our own work into our own R&D into it. We've went with multiple different, you know, and the good thing about working at a large printing corporation like R. Donnelly, I have a crap load of connections, you know,
Right.
So I was able to tap into, you know, a deep network of people on the material side. And we went down a bunch of different rabbit holes until we finally settled on this material, dry text, that is far and away, I think, the best, you know, Tyvek replacement, and, you know, having the ability to, you know, do all those great things. And not only that, you know, it's actually even at a better price point. Because like that's the other thing is, you know, if you're going to bring something to market that's going to be a sustainable offering, they're oftentimes are going to go with the better price point. So we want to like, hey, let's go ahead and take that out of the way. Let's get something that's at a better price point than Tyvek. And so not only can you save money by not using Tyvek, you get, in my opinion, a better product. It looks better from a quality standpoint because it's meant to be printed on. It's not second, you know, off-label use. And you know, there's a ton of like, you know, future aspects, you know, like you showed, I think Berlin and Europe, I think it's actually, if you look, it's probably different material. In Europe, they don't print on Tyvek. In Europe, they're using mostly a material called Teslin that is slightly different. And one of the unique aspects of their stuff is like you can do a lot more printing on site. Tyvek is super heat sensitive. Again, this is where I'm getting into the weird bib guide thing, man.
I'm looking at it. There's no way for me to tell, is it Tyvek or non-Tyvek. Yeah, good point though. Yeah.
And so like there has like different heat properties between the two. So like, you know, so for me, it's like, you know, I would like to arm, you know, our American races with the capability of being able to print on site. You're not going to do that with Tyvek. You know, the aspect of doing that's just crazy. So let's start now. And so this dry text is a great alternative. It's recyclable. And so we're working now with the manufacturer to get, you know, more and more information out. But even now, like we worked with the Eau Claire Marathon, Emmy and her team to, and actually Tina, they got the certification through Tina Muir for, you know, for Racing for Sustainability. And, you know, one of the components among a bunch of different things for their the environmental certification that they got was the fact that they used the dry text bibs and not Tyvek, you know, and had the ability to then offload any unused bibs because they're all, you know, any race that's going to do that are always going to order, you know, typically 10 to 15% more bibs than they need, because the worst thing that you want to have is no bibs on race day. Like, what are you going to do? And so those typically get, you know, those can get recycled now versus just go to the trash and go live in a landfill that will probably outlive our kids and our kids' kids. So yeah, so that is one. We have another, you know, another exciting one that I'm super excited to kind of show you guys.
Cool.
This is our hemp product. So we just did our first live order with our hemp bibs for USATF, and it was for their throws national championships out in Tucson. And so the neat thing about that is this is you know, we're looking at a compostable product. something that's fully, easily recyclable, compostable. The supply chain for us is that, we're located in South Carolina. We have a massive hemp economy, not marijuana. We're still very anti-marijuana here,
Yeah,
but we're very pro hemp. Strangely enough, welcome to the South. But no, so hemp farming is it's very prolific here, but one of the drawbacks is there still needs to be more economically viable products for hemp, and so this is South Carolina grown hemp that we have here. So we have a really close supply chain here where we could take the South Carolina grown hemp and turn it into basically bib material. So we have filler, we have some, hydrophobic properties that we're adding to that, because that's kind of the line that we're having to toe. Is like, we want it to be, you want it to eventually absorb water,
Right.
but just for a couple of days. Can we not absorb water for a couple of days? And that's what we're shooting for. And then eventually, so we're able to work with a custom material manufacturer along with our South Carolina farmers to kind of make this really neat product. We're in talks with a few other events that I'm really excited about rolling this product out. And then so there's a ton of opportunities on the sustainability side. And again, it goes to show like what we're doing from the material side, and talking about, that conversation with Frankie is like, it starts with material. Like, with
Right.
Tyvek, that's why it's always had safety pins, because people only want to print on Tyvek. You're never really going to get any type of material innovation on a material that is so heat sensitive that it restricts all the different other processes that could happen with, like, lamination or getting, like, any type of like adhesives and like custom adhesives and all this other stuff. It's like very hard to work with. This type of stuff allows us to start to look at, well, let's check this box and then start heading into these other arenas.
Makes sense. Cool. And then anything you want to highlight about the third pillar of RunVirt?
Creativity, man.
Yes.
Yeah. To me, like, creativity goes a long way. Like, it's, in how the bib looks, like the artwork, who is designing the bib, how are they able to design the bib, what part of the process are they designing the bib, how we even communicate and market ourselves is another thing. How do we, like, to me, like, the creativity element is truly us going from a bib company into a participant identification company. Right? So, like, how can we be creative enough to look at avenues to where, we can expand the utility of our product and what we do. And I mean, that's even as recently as 2 days ago, like having in my opinion, a really unique opportunity for content for a race.
Right.
We're not just, coming in, let's do a photo shoot. No, like, I was like, we had our mayor. So we like literally had the mayor of Bib Town.
Yeah.
Which is not really the name of our town, by the way, guys. It's Anderson, South Carolina, but we had the mayor of Anderson, aka Bib Town, USA. We had him on site. We had the president of the Atlanta Track Club, Rich Canal, great dude, by the way, former Olympian, dude's salt of the earth, came on site. And we, like I said, we had a whole big, we went overboard, had a balloon, had so much like 4th of July stuff.
I see.
It was cool. But that wasn't there. Like, we didn't just stop there. We took it a step further. We have a really great local running club called the Anderson Running Club. We wanted to interact there too. So create more opportunity for our customer to connect with, and through a grassroots way, with our local run club, and then build content around that. And then, you're able to get that out there, and hopefully, that just any little bit can help. And I think, especially in our world right now, in the content economy that we're in, I think there's an opportunity to have what we do just provide little touches. And honestly, how we do it is so unique because, with everybody else, you're going to have to show like 8 different steps for how a race bib is made. Like, for us, hey, stay right here for 10 seconds and you see a race bib be made. So
that made me curious, Taylor, because one of the things, and I've seen more as I participate in different races and I've talked to folks, like, there's a cutoff time when you can have your name printed on the bib, right? Most of the races have, like, hey, if you want your name printed on the bib, make sure you register by that time. After that, no, it's just a generic bib. And I think I see that since your manufacturing time is so kind of short, you can probably accommodate that, the order or the changes further than traditional manufacturing will take. I wonder, because that's probably some of the creativity aspect of how you have make it. I think I was looking at, Runvert, the whole life cycle, because folks can themselves design their babe on the your website itself, and then you start from there. I'm wondering how you're solving that to, maybe you have a little longer time for the folks, because most of the runners do choose races towards the end, very last minute.
I would tell you, this is probably one of the most exciting things that I'm working on actively is that element of, and it's not even to me, it's not even so much that it's us doing the printing.
Right.
That's again, if you're a printer, you just want to print everything.
Right.
I think for me, the value is how can we arm other people to print themselves, and not necessarily. I'm not advocating for runners printing their own bibs, at home, but can we build out a suite of products where timers are armed with, being able to just all they have to do is print bibs. A lot of them are printing their own tags. Like, why can't we make it to where that's a standalone product and we can build a solution around, them doing that. And then, and we even have a few timer customers that are even doing that today. I have a great client in New York, and he does a great job of, he will literally print, and we've set him up. We have a relationship with Xerox, and we are able to literally put him with a very specific, an affordable race day.
Oh.
In a weekend. So he's really the logistics out of it. And I'll tell you right now, that's a nightmare, because good luck trying to get anything truly.
Yeah.
It's just, and so to me, that is a big focus of mine, and how we can expand what a base race bib is not necessarily being so focused on how do we dominate the main production of it. I think it's how can we, facilitate, the bib production. And I think, honestly, through timing partners and through, the material side, and then also on the software side, how that, and building that and making the production of race bibs so easy that, hey, any Tom, Dick, and Harry with a timing company can do that. And to me, that facilitates a ton of different opportunities.
Oh yeah, definitely, because you are shifting it being one point, everybody's dependent on, versus spreading it across the timers who are actually ultimately, getting that, the chips with the bib to the race directors and then the runners eventually.
And then going back to the on-site bib printing, that's they're going to be on site. If we could do that for timers, we can easily set that up. So race expos, and we've even done that. Like, this is when I was at R. Donnelly, one of my favorite things that I've ever done was we worked the New York Marathon Expo in 2016.
Okay.
And we did this on behalf of the, I think it was the Team for Kids charity that they, very prominent.
Mm-hmm.
And, what they had asked us to do, and this is before it had ever really been done, was, can you come to our expo and print custom vanity bibs for people on site? So
I see.
What they were wanting was not just that. They were wanting the full activation. Can you set it up to where people can customize it, set up tablets, man that. And so we took that as a challenge. It was something that honestly was one of the most fun things.
Yeah.
As you could probably tell from accent, I'm Southern born and raised. So going to the big city and that was fun by itself.
Yeah.
But then also being able to do something really cool like that, interacting. I think I want to say, that's obviously one of the most heavily trafficked expos in the world. And you're talking, I think over the course of the 3 days we were there, I think we printed close to 15, 20,000 bibs on demand for people. And they're just saying for whatever reason, right? And it was, they did it, it was free, but it was like a suggested donation. And so they were able to fundraise off of that activation.
Mm-hmm.
And, people were, so you're able to connect directly with runners, why they're running, right? You're connecting with their why, which is a really neat thing. So.
Oh, nice.
That to me was one of the funnest things.
That reminds me, and I remember the Berlin Marathon, and I hope observation was correct, because they were actually printing at the expo.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yes.
Because you go there, say, this is my thing, and then someone goes back. It's like less than a minute. They're back with your bib printed up.
Yes. Mika, I think that's probably, they do a really good.
Yeah.
Micah, sorry. Yeah. So they do a really, a fantastic job of that. And that's something that, for us here, we need to be doing that. We need to be, and it's really something that's a charge of ours. And I think that we're going to be the ones that can get there here for the US, and we already are.
That's pretty good. That would be an awesome, forward journey. Tyler, if you want to share a little time about the unit economics of a Bib, because in the context of of everything is going around on the tariffs and the supply chain side, what is the impact of it, and then like what is the unit of scale to make a Bib, and it may be for the timers. I know this is your primary customer they're working with, or maybe for race directors. Because I think I had a good chat with Jay. I think you definitely know him, Jay Holder.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And then I think we talked a little bit about kind of the impact potentially the tariffs may have overall for the race production side of things, and how it may impact the runners themselves. For everything is bundled within the race cost, right? So it's somehow impact. But since you are talking about the Bib specifically, if you want to shed some light on the unit economics of that.
Yeah, I would say definitely. So it's kind of, we'll rewind the clock a little bit. Those supply chain difficulties immediately drove up the cost of Tyvek. So Tyvek, I want to say increased in costs. There was a period of time, I don't think it raised prices for like a decade plus, where Tyvek did not increase. And then, post-COVID, there was obviously different demand for healthcare supply of the raw material for Tyvek. So that drove the price up. And so now I would say, but it's still manufacturing, so that we don't necessarily have the tariff impact on material for Tyvek, but there's other things, right? I mean, you're looking at like the equipment that's mostly used for the production of race bibs are not US made. Ours happens to be, but a lot of the other ones are coming from other countries, and so parts, all that stuff, toner, everything kind of related to that. Is like Hewlett Packard does a ton of that today, and so they're I'm not sure exactly, because that's not the one that we use. There is probably I'm sure an impact there, but I know for a fact it's really going to be more on like the timing chip side. You're going to see impacts on the chips. You're going to see impacts on the inlays and the material that are used for those. And so that's where you'll see some slight impacts because of increasing bringing in newer materials. If we can reduce costs 15%, the race bibs, I'm gonna tell you, when it relates to their budget, is not a major impact. It's still something. That's still if that could help in any way, shape, or form. That's where we want to be. Providing some recourse for.
No, that's good to know, and thanks for sharing that context as well. Now, last question: what's next for Runvert?
Oh man, efficient. And that's always a daily thing. And looking at it, it's a quarterly review where we're looking at our processes. We do something called "How to Make Things Not Stupid" is what we call it, and we literally review all of our processes. And it's an all hands thing. We don't have a big team, so it's not like we're bringing a bunch of people in, but we bring in all the different facets of our business and say, okay, let's review our processes, and then have those people kind of explain what they do, and then they have to kind of. If there's anybody that has a question, that's what we're really starting to see, just continuous improvement on our side. But, that's a big thing. How can we be more efficient? And that's even, we came up with a new program now where we're able to capture what we used to throw away a ton of our Tyvek. And now we're able to recapture that. And then we have a secondary print method that is able to, handle a lot of our non-bleed orders very economically. And that was a big thing. Obviously, the sustainability stuff that we talked about, getting newer materials into the market, working with people that align, kind of with our vision, and it's not just a whole, but I think that we can also be capitalist and also environmentalists at the same time. And that's where, we're trying to kind of blend those two concepts. We want to provide options where people can save money and also help, again, I was a Captain Planet kid growing up. Now, I'm not sure if you know what Captain Planet is, but, the wonderful TV cartoon, and I grew up in the Atlanta area, and, Ted Turner is one of my like idols. And so, we like, I'll make our team like watch a random episode of Captain Planet at least once a month.
Okay.
You know, it's a so sustainability is a big part of, where we're headed and where we're focused. And then on the creativity side as well, those three things, when they're really kind of formed together, they all kind of work together.
Yeah.
We're really heavily focused on, how can I make the race bib and the RFID one thing instead of two things? It's honestly, in you talked about the safety pin thing. That is honestly a thing. A real quick story is, when I graduated college, I got that job at Thomas Consolidated Graphics. I was no longer waiting tables. I was actually making what I thought at the time. I was like, I'm making money. And the first job they put me doing for 2 months was just literally putting tags on bibs.
Oh, really?
Like on second shift, there was nobody there. And like, I felt like there was like ghosts in the place. And I'm like, this is what I graduated college to do. And
Yeah.
it's always, is kind of like 808 me. It's like, why that should not be a thing. Like we should be such an automated process. And a lot of people know, like probably I would say over 10 million bibs annually are put on by hand.
Really?
Here in the US, over 10 million bibs annually are put on by hand. Race Result has a great solution over there in Germany where they're, automating the affixing of their own tags. There's only so much of that. So I think for us, we would like to, be the leaders and again, it all goes back to material.
Right.
It all goes back to material. So if we can build a better, smarter material using our better, smarter process and then building better, smarter systems, that's how we leave an impact and truly make participant identification a thing and truly show that we're not just a race bib company. We're not a bib company.
No, that makes total sense. Tyler, it was great having you on the pod, and thank you for sharing. You definitely know a lot about bibs and you're living and breathing it. And thank you for sharing the overall context about the industrial landscape, where Runvert is heading, and also the challenges we have seen that you're solving through Runvert. So really appreciate your time.
Hey, man. And I'm going to tell you, what you're doing is unbelievable because just even I watched the Frankie episode. I watched the Bob Bickel episode. Just from watching those two alone, I'm picking up stuff.
That's
and
great.
So now I want to encourage anybody in our industry. It's not just, you don't just need to watch it because, I'm in registration and somebody from Reg is on. The sharing of ideas that are through this format and what you're doing is going to have a demonstrative impact. And so I just wanted to make sure I, pass along that. Like it's unbelievable, man. And so you keep doing what you're doing, man. I'm excited to see where you take this.
No, thank you. I appreciate for the shout out for sure. And that is the goal, to highlight some of the areas and then help it, whoever it can help, right? Take it on and
Absolutely.
go from there. Thank you.
Yeah.